Hey everyone! Today I'm going to show you how to put together and decorate a room for your stuffed animal. There's actually a part 1 to this video where I showed how to make a bed and closet, so if you haven't seen that, make sure to check it out. Now let's get started! First thing to do is pick out a space to put the room. I prefer corners or really any enclosed area. I chose this little corner of my room. It's not very big and the lighting isn't great for the video, but it does have a lot of wall space, and it's where I used to do all my stuffed animal rooms. If you want to add a different carpet to the room, you can always lay down a folded up blanket or fabric, but this time I didn't do that, so I can start adding the bed. To save space, I'm adding it to the corner of the room, and right when you walk in, you'll be able to see it. In the closet, I decided to add on the opposite wall. In my old rooms though, I usually just had a bed and maybe a nightstand, so don't worry if all you want to make is a bed. Speaking of nightstands, I'm next going to show you how to make one. The design I came up with for the nightstand are 3 cylinders with a piece of plastic on top. I'm going to be making the cylinders out of paper, so I've already cut those into strips. But my original idea was to use this really thick cardboard tube, but it was so hard to cut into, I just gave up and decided to use paper. In hindsight though, I probably should have just used a toilet paper roll. But I'm still using this tube as a guide, so I'm wrapping the paper around it and gluing them together as I go. I cut the strips to about 2.5 inches wide, since that's how tall I wanted the nightstand to be. You can make any kind of nightstand you want though. You could always use a little box or make a little round table. You can just be really creative and make any style you want. I like to look on Pinterest or through magazines to find inspiration. I'm going to make 3 of these tubes since I want my nightstand to be a little bit bigger, but honestly even just one would have been a good size. After letting all of them dry, I just painted them all with gold paint. Not sure if gold really works the best in this final room, but to me it just made the most sense. While those dry, I need to cut out the fake glass for the top. It's really just plastic from packaging, and luckily I had this big kind of box shape here. I know not many people have sheets of plastic on hand, so you'd always just use cardboard for this. The table just won't be clear. But after cutting out a sheet of plastic, I need to draw a circle so I can cut it out. To do this, I folded a piece of yarn in half and then tied a knot at the end, and then I just need to hold it down in the center and use the string to guide my pen to just draw a circle. I'm using a washable marker since it'll easily just be able to wash off. Then I can cut it out and rinse off the marker. Be careful when using plastic though, it can get pretty sharp. Now that both components are ready, I can finally put them together. The reason I wish I'd used just a toilet paper roll for the tubes is because the rolled up paper started separating as I painted it, so you can kind of see some white on the inside. And I'll be honest, I just used a glue stick to glue these together because I was kind of disappointed in how this was turning out, so I didn't feel like getting out the liquid glue for this. But maybe in a future video I'll remake this and make a better nightstand. But after that I just added the piece of plastic on top and let it dry. Next I'm going to move on to making some decorative pillows for the bed, and the first one I'm going to make is a little daisy pillow. I saw some of these on Pinterest, so I decided to try them out. I drew out a little flower pattern, and now I can just cut 2 of these out of some white felt. You can use different kinds of fabric of course, but with the hand sewn technique I'm going to show, felt just works the best. I of course also cut out a little circle of yellow for the center of the daisy. If you want to sew the center part on, now would be the time to do so, but I didn't have any yellow thread, so I'm just going to glue it on at the end. Okay, so I put some green felt in the background so you could see what I was doing, but here I have my needle and white thread. And I'm flipping the 2 flower pieces good side to good side, but with felt it doesn't really matter. And now I'm going to enter my needle through one side, and then instead of going back through the other side, I'm going to enter my needle again through that same side I started with. So I started by entering through the back, so I'm going to keep entering through the back when I do my stitches. It should look like the threads wrapping around the edges of the felt. And I forgot to mention, I'm entering my needle about 2 millimeters away from the edge of the felt. I like doing this stitch when sewing by hand since it's really easy. But if you're using a fabric that frays, I would just do a straight stitch on my sewing machine or do a back stitch by hand. I'm continuing doing this stitch all the way around except for about 1.5 petals. Once I've gotten there, I can turn the whole thing inside out and start stuffing it with pillow fluff, or you can use fabric scraps. I like to continue stuffing it as I close up the open parts because it can get kind of hard to close up the edges when the pillow is way too stuffed. But once it's fully closed, I can lock my stitch. And the last thing to do is just to add that yellow center to make it a daisy. I'll admit that this does not look exactly like the Pinterest photo I saw, but I still think it's really cute. Now the next pillow I'm going to make is just a really long rectangle one that's going to go in front of all the other pillows. And since I showed how to make pillows in my last video, I'm just going to show a quick montage of how I made this one. I did the exact same thing I did in the other video. I also sewed one last pillow this exact same way, except I used faux fur on one of the sides to make it a fuzzy one. I actually made a fuzzy pillow cover for my family for Christmas, and I have some leftover fabric, so if you have any suggestions on what I should do with it, make sure to leave a comment. I also wanted to show you all some other pillows I've made in the past. These big ones were obviously the main ones for sleeping on, and all I did was fold a piece of felt in half and then hand sew a running stitch all the way around and stuffed it. That's another really easy way to make a pillow, and I think with this rainbow one, I didn't even use thread, I just glued it together. Now, these throw pillows I made were a little bit questionable. This one I made out of leftover jean material and added a little felt rose to the front, so this probably is not the most comfortable to sleep on. And then this one's a little bit better. I just made a plain blue pillow, then glued on some flower pieces. And this last one I made out of pieces of fleece, and I added little bow ties to the front and the back. As you can see, there are just so many possibilities of pillows you can make, and not all of them will be award-winning designs, but they are still really fun to make. Now that I'm done with the pillows, I'm going to move on to do some wall art. My sister basically designed this entire room, and for wall art, she suggested little sketches of plants and butterflies, so that's what I'm going to be doing right now. I've just cut out various sizes of squares and rectangles, and when I hang these up, I plan to just group them into threes, so I wanted a variety of sizes to work with. So I just looked up butterfly and mushroom prints on Pinterest, and I got a lot of options on sketches I could do, so I just picked one to copy on each piece of paper. You can always trace these if you want, but I'm pretty good at drawing, so I'm just going to freehand them. And I'm trying not to use any erasers while drawing this, just so I can get more of a realistic sketched look. I know it looks like I'm going really fast, but this footage is sped up and it probably took me about 5 minutes to do just this little butterfly. The next one I'm doing is on this bigger piece of paper, and I'm just doing some mushrooms on grass. And I know this would look really good if I colored them in, but I didn't want to spend too much time on these. But maybe in the future I'll go back and paint over this with watercolor and colored pencils. And if I had made the paper a little more yellow and dirty looking, that would have made these look really realistic. But now I'll be quiet and let you enjoy this little drawing time lapse. Okay, all 6 drawings are now done, and before hanging this up, you could always stick it to some more paper to add a border, but I'm just going to leave them as they are. I also wanted to show some other wall art ideas that I used to do when I was younger. A lot of them were just cut off of nice thank you cards and stuck onto some more paper to add a little frame. So here's a nice gold one I made a long time ago. This other one I made doesn't even have a frame, it's just the front of a card. But it does look pretty cool. Instead of cards, you could also use scrapbook paper, printouts, or photos from magazines. The next thing I'm going to make is also kind of wall art, and that is some little fake vines. I did not come up with this idea, my sister thought it would fit the room, so I tried to recreate it. To make them, I'm cutting a long thin strip off of a piece of green felt. I cut it about 1/2 centimeter wide. Then I'm just going to lightly pull on the felt, and that should thin it out a little bit. That's why it's important not to cut this too thin, because if it's too thin, it'll just break. Alternatively, you could also use green yarn or string. Next, I'm going to take a piece of green construction paper and just fold the edge in half. Then I'm just going to cut little leaf shapes out of it, and you can make them as big or as small as you want. You'll also want to make sure the base is wide enough that the 2 halves are still connected at the fold. I had to cut out a bunch of these. I think I probably did 20 for this really long piece. I didn't put my leaves very close together though, so you could probably do more if you want a fuller vine. After all of them are cut out, I'm going to grab a glue stick and start applying glue on one of the inner sides of the leaves. Then I can wrap it around the vine and stick the other side to close it. For the next one, I'm trying to make it point in the opposite direction. So the last one I had going down, so this next one I'm trying to point it up. Now I just need to continue sticking on these leaves down the entire vine. I forgot to mention you can also make these leaves any kind of shape you want. I know those ivy vines are more popular in rooms nowadays, but my sister specifically told me not to do those, so I just did normal ones, and that was better anyway because they're way easier to cut out. Now once they're all stuck on, as you can see the green paper I used doesn't really match the color of the felt, so to fix that I'm going to take a green marker and draw a bunch of diagonal lines towards the center of the leaf, but I'm still leaving a clear line in the center. Then I can just color in the outer part, And now I have a dark green leaf with veins. Now I'm going to continue doing that to every single leaf. This does take a while, but I think it makes the leaves look a lot more realistic. After that, our vine is done, and I'm going to make one more of these, but I'm just going to make it about half the size. The last piece I'm going to add to this room is what I'm going to call a headboard for the closet. I know it's probably not called a headboard, but to me that's what it looks like. This is just going to go on the top of the closet to make it look a little fancier. I already made this a while ago when I was making a closet not for a video, but I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory to make. All I did was cut out a piece of thin cardboard a little bit longer than the width of my closet. Then I just drew out the shape I wanted my headboard to be and cut it out. And I also made this little butterfly cutout in the center, but that's a little advanced. I had to use an X-Acto knife for it. And then all I did was paint it and add some polka dots. I made sure to leave a little extra on the sides, and that's how I'm going to tape it onto the closet. So to attach it, I'm just folding those end tabs around the outside of the closet, or you could do it on the inside so it's more seamless. Then I can just tape it on so it's easy to remove or change out. And that's all there is to this headboard for the closet, and I think now that I've added it, it's actually a wardrobe now, but you get the idea. Now it's finally time to add all our decorations to the room. I'm going to start with the throw pillows, putting that little rectangular one in the front. And next I'm going to add my little drawings. I'm just using Scotch tape to stick this on. It shouldn't damage your walls at all. I'm arranging 3 of them above the bed, and then I'm going to add some more on the side. I'm also going to add that shorter vine I made right above all of this. Next, I'm going to add the rest of the drawings more towards the middle of the wall since that area is empty. And then with the really long vine, I'm going to wrap this around the top of the closet. The headboard helped a lot with this, but I just secured it with tape on the sides. Now the final thing to add is our nightstand. Once I put it in the room, it looked better than I thought it would. To the top of it, I'm going to add this little monstera plant I made. I did not come up with this on my own. I watched a video from My Froggy Stuff on how to make this. So I will link her video in the description box if you want to make this too. And since it was Christmas time, I also added this little mini tree. I'm not sure where I got it though. When my sister and I used to make rooms, we would go completely crazy with the decorating and the DIYing, but I wanted to keep it pretty simple for the video, and I think the final room turned out really cute. Thanks again to my sister for coming up with this whole vision. I didn't have much time to plan for this, so her ideas were really helpful. I really hope you enjoyed this video and try out making a room for your stuffed animal. And if you have any video suggestions, make sure to comment them down below. I'll see you next time! Bye!